A quick listener note here. We are up to currently episode 15 in total. We've got 3 series currently on the go, and this one is episode 13 in what is our third Roundtable podcast in the series, which is called The Do's and Don'ts of Support Coordination, where we take a look inside what it's like to be an NDIS support coordinator and help them better navigate the ever-changing NDIS system. This podcast is called The Journey to Conscious Healthcare, where we explore what it takes to consciously create longevity, happiness, and fulfillment in your life and that of others. The Journey to Conscious Healthcare looks at the healthcare industry, disability sector, and how to best navigate these areas to get the best for you and your life. I'm your host, Trevor, and I'm also the founder and CEO of Conscious Healthcare SA, an expert company that is known for high-quality healthcare services and transforming the healthcare industry in the disability space. Today's show is sponsored by Conscious Healthcare SA. At Conscious Healthcare SA, we provide high-quality healthcare services in the comfort of your own home. If you're interested in an easy and reliable way in order to navigate the NDIS and access healthcare services, please do get in touch. Now, as mentioned earlier, today is our third roundtable discussion. This one is, strangely enough, including a psychosocial recovery coach, just for a little bit more flavour. These discussions unpack challenges that are occurring within the support coordination and psychosocial space and bring it all up right to the surface. We're lucky enough today to have Jeanette Martin with us from the Benevolent Society. We've also got Keli Doubikin from Spiral Coordination and also Brian from BCOGNITIVE. Rather than me giving a personal introduction as I usually do, given that we're in a little bit more of a relaxed setting, I thought it'd be great to hear from yourselves. So maybe, Jeanette, we'll get you to start off and do a bit of introduction about yourself.
So I'm Janet Martin. I've been at the Benevolent Society since last year. Been working in support coordination for a couple of years now, but actually have a background in supported living accommodation, which I got into in 2009. Based out in the northern suburbs, live in the northern suburbs, and I feel I've really found my niche here with the clients out here that I support. I'm based nice and close to all of my clients, so lots of regular face-to-face visits with them, which really helps them feel heard and helps us move forward with their goals, moving through their NDIS plans. So, yeah, enjoying it.
Absolutely. I think modesty we didn't add to the agenda there, but geez, very modest, highly passionate. And I've got a lot of respect for you. I think I've learned a lot and followed your journey along the way, which has been very interesting. What we might do is follow clockwise. Brian, I might get you to do a bit of an intro about your background and psychosocial recovery coaching, a very topical discussion and area, and we're all ready to hear more.
Oh, well, thanks, Trevor. My name is Brian Njuguna, and I'm the founder of BCOGNITIVE. BCOGNITIVE does 7 key things, all related to mental health, counseling, psychosocial recovery coaching. We peer supervise, workplace solutions, mentoring, holding solutions, and more recently, we've started virtual reality therapy. I have a team of about 11 of us, and personally, I've been doing this since 2011, starting off in Port Augusta, and loving every minute of it.
Oh, fantastic. And you've got a great relationship with our Chief Experience Officer here from Conscious Healthcare SA. I heard you had a couple laughs at one of the networking events recently, but we won't maybe delve into that now, but quite a funny story.
Speed dating.
Keli, I hear you are very good at introductions, and I'm about to hear it.
Thanks, Trevor. So my name is Keli. I am the Director of Spiral Coordination. I started Spiral Coordination 2.5 years ago, sitting at my kitchen table with a borrowed laptop and 3 people who wanted me to support them in doing support coordination. We now have a team of 15. We provide support coordination, specialist support coordination, mentoring, group-based activities, and personalised respite for people with psychosocial disability. I've been working in this space for about 22 years, to hit my 23rd year. So all I've ever done is community services. I've worked in every silo but justice. So I've worked alongside justice but never actually worked in it. I have lived experience. So as I mentioned earlier, I do have 2 children who have disabilities, and I have a disability myself. So I'm autistic and I have ADHD. So you can imagine it's a very interesting place to work in my house. And yeah, so that would be me. I love what I do. We are very passionate about what we do. We kind of focus more on hidden disabilities, so psychosocial disabilities, acquired brain injuries, autism, so people on the spectrum, and intellectual disability. We don't actually support anyone with high care needs because it's kind of that's our niche. We're located in O'Halloran Hill.
Oh, perfect. And on that note, we've got so much more to unpack, but geez, we've got some time ahead, so I might leave it at the minute. But you're saying O'Halloran Hill. We might quickly go around. I know you did say, Jeanette, you're up north. Do you want to specifically sort of say, just so we can get people listening, they can get a concept as to the geographic reach that we've got today?
So I actually have clients in Roxby Downs. So when I say out north, we go from the northern side of the city right the way up. So we do have a support coordinator based in Port Pirie. We have another one based in Salisbury here with me that does the York Peninsula, but I do have some clients as far out as Roxby. So we do actually extend a considerable way out. We then have our Melrose Park office that covers the southern side of the city, but within that we go right out as far as Mount Gambier. So yeah, it's quite extensive. However, the majority of clients that we support are in that Elizabeth Salisbury area, going up through Modbury, around that area. So, yeah.
No, it makes perfect sense. And in the pre-podcast interview, Brian, you did indicate South was your jam, but would you like to just specify a little bit more if that's okay?
Yeah, so it depends on which service you're accessing. For the psychosocial recovery coaching, we only do South. So we're talking from Adelaide all the way down to Aldinga. But for every other service, we are nationwide.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Now, we do start out with a bit of a personal question to start with. Not hugely personal, though, but Kelly, you're going to start us off with either a bit of a weird, quirky, strange habit or hobby that you have. Would you like to open up for us?
Tattoos are my hobby, Trevor. My quirks are just a lot of my autism traits. I swear like a drunken sailor, gets me into trouble. But tattoos, so I'm actually covered in them. Pretty much from head to toe these days. That would be my hands, feet, back, neck, arms, legs. Yeah, that would be my my quirky habit or hobby. It's therapeutic.
That's all good. That's all good. Now, our next question that we've got here is what you wanted to do when you grew up. Now, each are just going to ask a sort of different question here. So I think, Jeanette, you're going to answer this one and potentially Brian as well.
So I actually wanted to be a debt collector. So I actually studied in the UK to do the Institute of Credit Management exams. And the reason I wanted to work in that space is quite often debt collectors are rude. I have no time for rude debt collectors, and I actually wanted to change that. So I actually headed up a team of debt collectors who worked across the base of the United Kingdom, as well as France and Portugal. And the one thing that I always taught them was it's never excusable to be rude to someone, even if they do owe you money, and you will get much better results if you break down those payments into smaller amounts. So, you know, just being respectful and nice to people over the phone when you're dealing with them was definitely the way to go. So, yeah, I trained as a debt collector and enjoyed working in that space for many years. Obviously, with budgeting NDIS plans, you know, it's a good experience to be able to have. Also, a lot of our clients have debt collection problems. They come from that lower socioeconomic area, especially out here in Salisbury. So being able to understand that and navigate the complications of that with them. So that prior history is standing me in good stead now where I'm working.
Oh, fantastic. And you are extremely lovely to speak to, and you're very polite and got good rapport skills. But I won't build up your ties too much. Brian, what about you? What did you want to do when you grew up?
So I wanted to be a lawyer.
A lawyer?
And I did. I did actually become a lawyer, practicing for 13 years. And it's after becoming a lawyer that I went into mental health.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to express upon that at all? I feel like that's quite a juicy. You don't have to, but I mean, there's a bit of juice in that orange.
There is. So I worked as a defense lawyer for the Aboriginal legal rights movement in South Australia. So up in Port Augusta, I did Sydney, out west in Parramatta, St. Mary's, Mount Druitt. Then I was a prosecutor with the DPP in Canberra. And it's during that last stint where my mental health deteriorated significantly, relocated back to Adelaide and decided a much better place at helping people recover from their mental health, give them something that I didn't get.
Oh,
so when we first started BCOGNITIVE, it wasn't NDIS specific, and it still isn't. We started it on a work solutions, targeting mainly law firms and trying to improve mostly the employees' mental health and output in essence.
Oh, that's fantastic. I do say this a few times, but I'm maybe I'm a bit too emotional. But that's got me moved there. I'm going to go completely off script here now. One of the questions I don't typically ask, but I think maybe you've just led there is your why. I think you might have shared your why about your passion and drive behind what you do. But maybe we'll actually just straight open into that. So I mean, you probably shared a bit there, but if you want to continue on a bit about your why and a bit more about what it means to you, not just about what you do, I think that is important, but why you do it, I would say, is 100 times more important than what you do. That might change, right, what you do.
I bring a different dynamic to what I do, I think. With psychosocial disabilities, we focus mostly on that lived experience, whilst we have the qualifications, but we focus on the lived experience because when I was in the thick of it, when I was suffering significantly, there wasn't many services that were tailored to meet my needs. Then come the NDIS, and there's a lot of people in this space, a lot of great people, but very few people who actually understand the legislation behind it. So part of what we do, part of what I'm very passionate about is a peer supervision element where we pull the psychosocial recovery coaches aside, we pull some of the support coordinators aside and break down, the NDIS Act, break down the policies, break down the procedures. Why is it that it's that way? And through that, we are finding that we are getting better outcomes for the clients, which for me is a significant issue. Trying the best that we can to achieve the most for the client in a very, very complex space.
Yeah, wow. You've got a big heart, Brian, I can tell. And like what you're doing is massive. I think, we've all learned a lesson here just in hearing you sort of say through that. We're going to go reverse clockwise now for me, which is Jeanette, you're up. What's your sort of why and passion behind it?
I actually came to Australia back in 2002, then had my little family and wanted a part-time job. And from that, I reached out and did the Certificate 4 in Community Service. And as part of that, we had to do placements. So I did a placement with a company that worked with children that had been removed from their families. And part of it was working with the family and then having a playgroup session with the parents and the children after they'd done their session of learning with us. And a lot of the parents I saw were brilliant parents, but with challenges. And they obviously hadn't had access to the supports that they needed. And had they have had access to those supports, their parenting skills may have been very different. So giving people access to supports in their challenges was something that definitely would have made a huge difference for these parents, for the children of these parents. And so that then led me through to disability and disability services from there. Yeah, it really was upsetting to see these children being removed from their parents. And the parents were all very often very kind, loving, caring, unsupported people. No informal networks around them, no support networks around them. And that was the big failure for them.
Yeah, I can really hear that. And I suppose what I'm hearing behind all that as well is if we put you into any different industry, it seems like you change it for the better. So we might have to get you and Linda Reynolds in the room, and maybe she can listen to a couple of your suggestions, and we'll sort of see where we land up. Keli, sorry.
My wife. My kids are my wife. But also, I've spent the past 23 years supporting people to be as independent as possible. So we spend so much time telling people what they can and what they can't do, what they should, what they shouldn't do. But why? Why do we do that? Like, why have I got complete choice and control over how I live my life? But then we go in and we tell people who have, additional needs that they can and they can't do the things that they want to do. So I'm a big believer of, dignity of risk over duty of care, all of those kind of things. But it's always been about allowing people to be as independent as possible. So that's how we run in our organisation. It is all about goal-orientated stuff, helping people achieve their goals. But the NDIS, I'm actually really passionate about the NDIS and how it works, and just like the true form of the NDIS, like what it's supposed to be, not necessarily what it is right now, but what it's going to be in 10 years' time. And from where we started, because we need to remember that it is still in its infancy. And, who remembers what Medicare was like when Medicare first started, or DVA when DVA first started? Like, we kind of take that for granted, and I think it will eventually, the NDIS will be very similar. But educating people. So I'm very much around educating, like Brian, educating people around the NDIS, what it actually means, there's so much misinformation out there that we spend so much of our time in this space kind of having to re-educate people, and then, we cop flack because I heard from such and such that I could get this, and then, but I read this on this Facebook page that, you can get da-da-da-da-da-da-da, that you spend most of your time educating. But I'm also educating about other providers and my staff. All of my staff learn about the NDIS, and just talking to people. So I'm very passionate about talking to people about what it is we do. And, I'm a big supporter of the NDIS, where a lot of people aren't. I truly believe this scheme is amazing. I worked block funding model for such a long time. Like, I spent, 18 years or so in block funding model. So I see the benefit of the NDIS, how that's changed, why that's changed, and the benefit that it can have for people. It's all about that. It's all about changing how people think, changing how the supports that people get, and giving them back their independence and the control over their own lives.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. And one of the biggest themes that you sort of set out there was about education, which is fundamentally why we're all sitting here in a podcast today. I think it's really important that people do get the correct information, and particularly the right information that's filtered down from the channels and is up to date and is accurate. Because I think fundamentally there's so many times where you hear something, but it might be 6 months old. That every day that you clock into a desk where you're involved in the NDIS, there's new information and new standards to adhere to. So it's pretty important that we actually stay up to date. That leads me to a bit of a question. I have got Aaron Byrne from the NDIA coming on to the podcast the next couple of weeks, which will be good and fun. If you were to be speaking to him directly, what questions would you like to have answered for yourself from the NDIA or NDIS? What sort of things would you like, black and white, so that you actually have it clear as day? Because I know it's not clear as day, but if we could have them asked, what sort of questions would we ask?
Oh, hands down, the reasoning process behind cutting back supports, especially when they NDIS, it's simple, it's evidence-based. You give them the evidence you need about a disability, give them the evidence they need about how that disability impacts a participant's life. Then that's what they use. So no evidence, no funding. But when you provide the funding, you provide the reports, and there's enough evidence there, how do the person behind the screen, the government employee who knocks it back, what reasoning process are they using, and can they share that information so that we can then incorporate it into our practice to avoid as many people being knocked back? A good example, Trevor, is an occupational therapist will recommend 3.5 hours of supports a day. And then the plan comes back and it only has 2 hours. So where did that hour and a half go?
Yeah. Who's made that decision? Whose authority is it? Is that the incorrect report, or is it that maybe the person's maybe not read the report possibly? But I'm not going to go down that path too much. But I think, that's fundamentally a great sort of a question to ask. I might continue on. I think it's a great question, though, and there's a lot of fuel to that one, which I'm sure we'll get more in a sec. Who wants to go next?
I would be the same as Brian. Justification. I want to know, like, justification for no's. Outside of does not meet, and you get like this stupid, like, doesn't even give us an answer. It's usually like it's a duplication of services. How? Tell me how it's duplication of services. Or just a flat out no. But then there's the flip side, like, tell me why some people are completely and utterly overfunded. Like and then you've got other people, so someone who doesn't need the level of support that they're funded for, and they get like a $200,000 plan. And then you've got somebody who needs significant support, and they've got they don't even have enough to get through a week's worth of basic support. So like that, the justification, that's what I would ask Aaron, the justification. What is the justification for funding levels?
I think that's a rhyme and reason is what I'm hearing. What is the rhyme and reason? What's the song we're ticking along to? I mean, if I'm singing the wrong words for whatever song it is, it's not going to make sense. I think we do need to understand that. Jeanette, what's your take here? Have you got a particular question up your sleeve? I'm not saying you don't agree with the one already, but a particular question if you get to ask.
Yeah, definitely what the other two have just said. I've actually asked for a freedom of information report around one of my clients and the decision that was made, not just for this plan, but for the last plan as well, because both plans saw funding cut. And I know exactly the same as Brian said, that all the evidence was there and the reporting was consistent across the board. So where you have consistency from all practitioners, all giving their qualified opinion, why are we then seeing a reduction in funding when the reports actually requested an increase? So I've actually gone down the route of a freedom of information to actually be able to have a look at how that decision-making process was come to, because parental responsibility is currently being used as a get out of jail clause. Parents are very responsible in many cases, above and beyond they go for their children, getting them to sessions, looking after them at home. But these quite often the situations that we're supporting are incredibly complex, and it's 365 days a year, and that cannot be supported by one person where we have a sole household, one adult, possibly two or three children, all on NDIS plans. The outcome for the children in those situations, it's very detrimental not to have supports in the home and access to therapy services at the level that's recommended. For me, looking long term, the NDIS is not supporting these people long term. It is looking at a short-term funding problem and not supporting them long-term to build capacity.
Well, geez, there's a couple of bits of gold that come out of that. Geez, where do we go? I've got two things. We'll cover both, I reckon. One I'm hearing there is boundaries and silos, which I'm sure we can go into in a big way. But what we might tuck on first, which I think will probably be the juiciest, is informal supports. I mean, we use the example of, if someone's got, and this is typically for myself, now I'm only one person, but I dare say we're going to get 4 yeses to this, is if someone's got an informal network or informal supports that are strong, they tend to do quite a lot better. But then if it's not so well, they can, no one's sort of checking, following up, is the therapist, support work or whatever else it might be, are they doing what they should? Is the still provider, doing the ratios that they should or whatever else it might be? And I'll sort of question a bit as well. We obviously got quite a few OTs in our team as well. And, we'll go through about, what's happening with their informal networks. And it's one of the things that occupational therapists do is they often will go, right, not just now, how are we planning for 5, 10, 15 years into the future? And what happens if they've got a sole dependency on one person? So use an example, a lot of support coordinators or psychosocial recovery coaches might only have one person linked up with a person. What happens if that person goes away? So, you know, where's the backup plan? I mean, if you're in a business and you're completely reliant on yourself, that's great until you're gone. And then what what do you do then? So what do you sort of think? It's an open question, but in regards to informal supports, what's your thoughts on that? And whether that's a risky thing, a good thing, like as in how do we navigate this better? And I'll throw it over to Brian first because I think you're about to jump in.
I am. It's something that I'm really passionate about. Our specialty are complex clients. So we get clients with either recovered or still drug abuse, AOD issues, significant behavior issues present. So when you talk about an informal support, what exactly is that? Do they have a parent? Probably not. If they have somebody in their life, are they already tired? They've been supporting this person for 20, 30, 40 years. They're exhausted. So they don't have any informal support other than the question they usually get of, or do you have somebody who comes to see you? They're like, yeah, mom sometimes pops in. But immediately they mention mom, then mom becomes a support. And then the whole plan is structured around the mom assisting. And, it doesn't happen, at least not for the complex clients that I interact with. And that's the bulk of all my work with psychosocial recovery coaching.
Yeah, wow. I think there's a question that's coming Aaron's way out of that one. We might jump to Keli next. What's your thoughts? Informal supports?
We're the same. We support lots of people who don't have any. We are literally the only supports that they have. Like, we are the only people that go and check up on them. We are the only people that, make sure that they're okay. We're the only people that when they, are admitted, so they ended up in Margaret Tobin, it's us, the SA Health are calling to go, can we discharge such and such a person? What supports have you got in place to make sure that this person is safe? Like, they have literally no one. I think that the NDIS take informal supports far too, we all care of burnout. Like, I've lived care of burnout. My eldest son is incredibly complex young creature. And I have no informal supports, it's just me. So I juggle many, many balls. And there is such thing as care of burnout, but the NDIS don't look at that. They don't look at, what that every day of living it, what that does to a person. And when you have multiple children in a household that have complex needs, no wonder mum is sitting in the corner having her mental health goes downhill to completely. Well, where's her support? And then we get that, Jeanette was saying, parental responsibility. Oh my God, don't get me started on parental responsibility. It's probably one of the most
It's coming up, don't worry. I got it. We got it.
Yeah, that would be
I got that.
And frustrating.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And Jeanette, what's your sort of take on that? Informal supports?
It is incredibly difficult, and part of the reason I like to be face-to-face with my clients is you actually get to go into their home, you get to check out their living situation. Quite often from that you build rapport with the informal supports. Informal supports isn't just making sure someone, gets to the shops and has food. Informal supports is about long-term decision-making. It's about have they been to the dentist? How do they pay for their dentist? Can they interact with Centrelink? How are they doing that? How are they being supported to do that? So while we support NDIS, a lot of these other areas come up. One of my clients got a speeding fine the other day and had no idea how to navigate the system to set up, a payment plan for that. And so we've connected her in with a service that can then do that for her ongoing, because my role isn't to fix that for her. My role is to a service that can do that ongoing with her. So Uniting Communities have a lovely Connect service that works in the financial area to support people with those things. So, because if you haven't got an informal network around you, so this is actually an adult with a disability, and she lives with her 13-year-old daughter. So her 13-year-old daughter is actually her informal support.
Mm.
And so there's some real challenges out there with informal supports. When an informal support is a minor, it's incredibly complex.
We used to have amazing supports for like informal sports, like so carer programs. And then when they changed the funding, around informal carers a couple of years ago, it all disappeared. Like the government thought that they were making these better changes and they were going to get more supports and it was all going to be more structured, and it wasn't. There's so many people out there that were linked in with care providers that were there just to support those informal supports, and they've gone. They don't have access to them anymore.
Yeah, it is a challenge in regards to what happens in that space. I know there's a group, I'll shout it out again, I've said it a couple of times at my time, there's a group that's around and they sort of do some good work. There's a little bit of funding there. I dare say it's not probably what it needs to be, but I'm not going to go delve into that. But like in actually having support for those that are supporting others, because, how do you then, you talk about navigating your own health and self-care and all that sort of stuff, but when you've got full-time responsibilities for other people, it's very easy, like to neglect yourself. And you're not intentionally doing that, but it's just like, how do you, juggle the cooking, the cleaning, everything, and being a full-time, effectively therapist or trying to assist your child or whoever else is a family member. It's incredibly challenging. We've got Brian jumping back in. I think he's coming in a sec here. But we've got, when we started earlier, what we were going through was informal sports. We've covered that. I'm quite interested, though, about your thoughts on boundaries. Now, this is parental responsibility. This is the difference between, what's medical and what's disability. It's slightly a controversial conversation, actually. But if you're happy to delve into it, who would like to start and just sort of say, what do you think about these boundaries and silos? And are we here to just help people? Or is it easy enough just to sort of push it on to the next person? And it's not my job,
Handball.
It's over to you. Like, is that enough? Are we happy with the handball?
Trevor, it goes the other way. It's not. I don't think it's us within the NDIS space that are handballing it over to other silos. It's those silos that are handballing it to us. Do you know how many times we had a call from SA Health or a call from a participant who is in hospital and have been told because they have an NDIS plan, the NDIS will fund rehab, will fund equipment, will fund whatever they need. That has nothing to do with their disability. Happens all the time. Or like within our psychosocial space, we get calls going, you know what? They're no longer in crisis. They're out in the community. Your responsibility. It happens all the time. It's my biggest, within this space, it is my biggest, like, it's what I get up on my soapbox about the most. Is around, like everybody else pushes it onto us. They don't realise that we're actually here to work alongside everybody else. We're not here to fix everything. And we're not here to to take all the responsibility off of every other, federally funded activity that's out there. We're here to...
Keli. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's okay.
I was saying, what about when they refuse to do stuff because, especially when clients are in crisis, because you're there and you're calling them and you're saying, my participant, he or she's in problems, they're in crisis, we need you to step up. And they're like, no, thanks, we're busy.
Yeah.
We'll get Can I jump in just quickly? Because I've got a question here, and I think maybe this will add a little bit more layers to what we're discussing. Like your background, you're saying Brian is a lawyer, right? Now, I am not a lawyer, professing that straight up. But in law, what is somewhat interesting, I think, I quite like, is that you have case studies and have examples. And that's like a precedent, right? Which we've seen this, right? So as an example, if you let someone continue not to put the bin out, then they don't put the bin out, you know what I mean? Like, there's no consequence for it. But in law, there's, precedents for, here's an example of Bob or Jane or, Jess, whoever we want to use. And this is what happens in this situation. So you can reasonably expect that would happen if that situation comes through again. Now, it's not black and white, but is there some sort of a precedence that could be set here to just make this a little bit easier so that governments or whatever bodies they are, I don't particularly actually care too much. I just think that fundamentally, this whole theme of silos is useless, and what we're really here to do is help people. So it doesn't matter whether it's in your backyard or your neighbour's backyard, it's in your community, right? It's your people. We're all Australians and all that sort of stuff. Like, what are we going to do? Like, what's your thoughts? I don't know if you can put a lawyer hat on and obviously put a disclaimer in if you want, but
big disclaimer, no legal advice being offered, but precedent only works because there's one person making a decision. There's a judicial officer at the top who says, yep, this is the case. You have 2, 3, 4 different lawyers arguing about the same case. Everyone who interprets it a different way. If you don't like what that judge says, then you take it upstairs and you appeal. In the mental health space, in the NDIS space especially, you deal with one mental health worker today. Then they call in sick, then that caseload, or they resign because the work is hectic. They go to somebody else, and all of a sudden you have to start again. So there's no precedent. There's nobody, there's no overarching authority that will say, when this happens, this should follow. So every day my life is about trying to switch talk people to do what they're actually supposed to be doing. So that it's a favor to me.
Can we? Is there a way it could work? I mean, I know you're saying there's not, but like, and I don't profess that we're going to solve the NDIS in an hour. Maybe we will, but like, is there any way that it could well happen? Like, there's got to be some place where it could start, isn't there? Like, I mean, if we start somewhere, surely it's got to get better. That's why, Kelly, you're talking about in 10 years' time. I'm excited about 10 years' time. Like, hopefully we will get better. That there's a premise that like we can run quicker in the marathon today than what we could have 10 years ago. Surely in the NDIS,
I think
we can support people better.
It's about education. Do you know how many mental health nurses we meet who have no idea how the NDIS works? Like, none.
That's a problem.
So then, because the SICC closed a few months ago. It's a mental health facility down south. So all of their nurses have now gone out into the community. And so we've got this influx of mental health nurses because, the SA Health have to give them jobs. But we meet them and they're like, they will actually openly go, we don't know how the NDIS works. So we'll have a participant that is in crisis and we've got SA Health calling us. We'll have Housing SA calling us, going, your participant is doing da-da-da-da-da. And we're like, and yep. So we step in because nobody else will. But we're still at the same point, we're educating Housing SA in what our job actually is and what they need to be doing. And then we are currently now educating all of these new mental health nurses that are out in the community on the NDIS because they have no idea what they're talking about. We've actually had them sit there and go, we do not know what the NDIS is about. Like, what is it that you guys do? And then it will be, like Brian said, they're either sick or they've had enough, or, and they resign. If our participants are lucky enough, they will get another community nurse. We've got people who slip through the cracks and 3, 4, 5, 6 months had nobody.
Yeah.
And Trevor, my deliverable, especially for my team, number one on our board is to avoid hospitalizations. When any of my participant is in crisis and people don't intervene, what usually tends to happen is the mental health nurse will go there, they'll find somebody who's not doing well. Their policy states you have to go back to the office, call for backup and call the police. Once the police show up, now that's an escalation because my participant will see the police, then the neighbors will see the police, and then it becomes a massive fracas. And then before you know it, then there's resist police, hinder police, assault police. All the neighbors are out watching. And then, but more importantly is that the participant, once they recover, they no longer feel safe in their home, which is meant to be their castle. Because all the neighbors now know, one, they have mental health issues, and two, that the police were called. The embarrassment that comes from it. So when I'm calling crisis, I never call to tell them you need to pick up this guy because they're not doing okay. It's usually let's work together because this is what we have been able to achieve. This is the 10% we hope you guys can help us with to convince the person to take their meds, to convince the person to see a psychiatrist. And by the time you're making that phone call, Trevor, we've organized for a psychosocial recovery coach. They're in their car ready to go. We've organized for a support worker to go pick up the client so that they can take them to hospital. The only thing left is that one person to finish that puzzle. And most of the time, it doesn't work. They're not ready or not willing.
Yeah, it's a real challenge one there. I'm not saying we're going to answer it, but I think this has been a fruitful discussion. Jeanette, we didn't quite catch your bit about that. So boundary silos, I know we've gone a few spots. Happy for your input and however you'd like it.
It is about relationship building. I think, now we've got the support coordination teams out there and they are networking madly with all of these different areas, with housing, with the hospitals, with social workers, with DCP. We are building those relationships which will help this move forward. NDIS is more aware of the fact that it needs to be including health issues. They, October, I think it was 2020, they included diabetes and feeding and a number of other areas that were previously not supported. So they have extended their health supports, which was fantastic because then clients could get their consumables for those items through their NDIS plans and receive supports from people like dietitians that previously they weren't having access to. But there is so much more that needs to be done. And I think the mental health area is, really that big gap in NDIS still. It's a gap in terms of funding, it's a gap in terms of support, and it's a gap in terms of connections. Part of that is because a lot of the support coordinators come from a physical disability background, not a mental health background. So we perhaps as an industry do not have as much education. People like Brian are obviously fabulous and well ahead of a lot of other support coordination areas in terms of that mental health support. But it is a gap. It is a gap. And it's one that, I think all of us, you can hear the passion in that needing to be better supported.
No, I really hear that. And I suppose maybe whilst we are talking about mental health and not just mental health, but like what are the challenges and areas, where can we go right and where can we go wrong? So this is as a support coordinator or a psychosocial recovery coach, if you had your little bit of a box and a bit of advice, a billboard about what to do or maybe not to do, what would you sort of suggest for those others that are in your industry?
Accept, don't take everyone, especially when you can't handle. I'm not naming names here, but we have some massive organizations that are literally holding psychosocial disability participants. They don't have the capacity to service them. And even when you reach out to assist, they're not willing to. There's a lady, Melissa Carr, from, I forget which organization she is, but she was one of two support coordinators to reach out and say, Brian, we don't have capacity for somebody with this type of mental illness. Could you please help? I have never been as excited as I was when I received that phone call. Because it's not a failing, Trevor. It's just you saying, you know what, I am good at a lot of things, but this one here, that's a tricky one. I will let somebody else who maybe has a bit more experience in that assist, because it's about the participant and making sure that they get the best.
Yeah. I feel like purpose beyond profit, right? Like as in not necessarily hoarding a wait list or anything else like that, because that doesn't really help anyone. Fundamentally, people are going to work that out or not, whether or not you've got the right intentions and if you're trying to put participants first. And they say it, right? Because you see them walk from support coordinator or psychosocial recovery coach to one to another. And typically, it might not always be the person. There's many organizations out there that have systemic issues within them as well, which causes some of this stuff. So you can have lovely people, poor organization and culture, and then it just continues. But nonetheless, we'll keep going around the room here. That was a great answer there. Jeanette, do you want to jump in?
Well, Trevor, you know that I live with someone with a psychosocial disability, and I'm a support coordinator, and I can't navigate his supports. It's incredibly difficult out there. People with psychosocial disabilities find it really hard to connect with services. And as Brian was saying, the number of times we connect with someone and then they disappear. We go to our employment provider for an appointment and we're expecting to meet with Sean, and we turn up to the appointment and Sean's left the company. And so today you'll be meeting with someone else who knows nothing about you. And when that is repeated a number of times over a period of months, that's then a disconnection from the service. I'm not going there anymore because they don't care. And once you disconnect from a service, you then have to go through the process of finding another service that will take you and building that connection and building the confidence for that individual to walk back through another door. We've actually gone through 4 different employment providers over the space of a couple of years. I know that I've spoken to you about this one. It's incredibly hard to support people with psychosocial disabilities to keep pushing forward when the service they receive is quite often appalling. And it's due to the number of people that are jumping between positions. And so there isn't that consistency for them to have that trust, to have that one person that when my son's lucky, he's got informal supports. So we navigate him going back again and again and again. Without that informal support, as Keli said, you get people that drop through the cracks and they drop out, and they may not be interacting for 6 months, a year with any services, and that's a massive failure.
Well, dare I say it, I suppose that opens up a few different things, burnout in the industry, in regards to pay rates people have, qualifications, quality standards and checking registered providers or not. But hey, you know what? That's all good. I'm sure we'll cover that soon. Now, Keli, over to you.
Mine would be, like you mentioned, Trevor, is burnout. And it actually, I think it also comes from what I found working in this space for as long as I have, is that not from being an employer, but from being an employee as well, is this job's not for everybody, and I think what happens and what I've noticed, especially as being an employer, is people have this idolized view of what it is that we do. They think it's all lollipops and rainbows, and all you need to do is make a few phone calls and, send a couple of emails and bang, you've done your job. They don't realise what it is that we actually have to do. And that's where it comes, that turnover that Jeanette was talking about. It's because people go into it, hell for leather, I'm going to make a difference, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then, they have 50-odd people on their caseload, and they've got, some providers have really high KPIs, and you've got complex people, and, it's not all just making a few phone calls, sending a few emails, and you're done for the day. And they get really disheartened and they leave. And then you have to start again, and then in our space, you're right, there's this massive trust issue, because how many, and Brian would know this, how many of our guys have people who disappear? Too hard, you're too hard, going to handle you to the next person. Oh, you're too hard, I'm going to handle you to the next person. So then they don't have that trust. So, actually understanding what this role entails, and no course is ever going to teach you that.
No.
There is no course. There is not a single course that is run ever that will actually teach you 110% what this job entails, especially in our space. As a whole, the support coordination, but it's difficult to navigate, and things are constantly changing, and people's needs and wants and whatever are constantly changing, regardless of what their diagnosis is. In our space, it's that trust. So when they lose somebody, well, why should I stick with you? Why do I have to tell my story again? Like Jeanette, that whole employment provider thing, I get that. I've worked in that space as well. But it's in any silo that someone's working in, because I have to tell my story again.
Yeah.
Do you know how annoying and frustrating and disheartening it is when you have to tell your story
every single time you talk to somebody. You know, like that. Even at 14, my son is exactly like that. He's like, oh my God, I'm so sick of telling my story. Can't they read the case notes? Don't they already know what's going on? So it happens even from an early age that, you know, having to tell my story all over again. So why bother? Or, you know, why bother engaging with that person, because you're going to disappear.
Yeah,
I'm going to be too hard for you. You're going to leave. So why bother? See, that's the hardest part, is that consistency and that not burning out, and taking as an employer, taking care of your staff is really important.
It's a very big and valid point you raised there. I think there's quite a few things that sort of come into that, because the whole like transparent, you know, like constantly, you know, one person after another person. And what I've been doing quite a bit of work recently with social workers. I think anyone that follows me on LinkedIn will probably notice that I'm somewhat a big fan of them, actually. And it doesn't just matter about whether it's social workers. I'm actually a fan of allied health professionals or people that have got big hearts, to be honest. You got a big heart, but hey, you're my person. Let's be friends, right? But fundamentally, what I don't see, everything that we've discussed there, I think, leads into rapport building, trust, all these different things. When's the last time that you had someone get 10 or 15, maybe 20 hours put in that plan for an OT, a social worker, whoever it is, right? So it doesn't matter who it is, just to like build rapport, right? Because we've got to deliver outcomes within a certain time period, right? So like, as in, it's a bit of a laugh I have with some of these social workers. It's a laugh, but it's a laugh because it's so true that it's so broken. It's like, if we actually want to break through the barrier here, don't we actually need to get there to be some person, not just one person, hopefully multiple people that they actually trust and they sort of work with. But if it's not funded in the plan, like, I mean, I think one of the most amounts of money I got in someone's plan was $700,000 or $800,000. Big plan, right? Quite a lot. Obviously wrote a pretty comprehensive report, and it's great that we got that. But I think what's really important is, like, one, how much it varies, but two, like, as in, I get a bit annoyed when we're spending. So I don't have a problem with support workers. I think there's fantastic support workers out there, and I think we'd all, nod along with that. There's also some that maybe aren't doing quite as well as they should. Difficult space, got a lot of time and appreciation for it. But when you see $300,000-$400,000 a year get spent on that, and then you see that you're trying to justify $5,000 or $10,000 on therapy funding or something that can be used to try and increase their independence and skills and help them navigate this, whether it be not getting enough psychosocial recovery coaching funding or whatever it might be, I just find that it beyond me that why aren't we investing in this person? This is kind of almost like you invest in your car tires and all these other things so that you're safe and you can navigate the world. Like, what's your sort of thoughts in having money put aside and actually invested in that person so that they can live, a happy, normal life and have these opportunities? Am I just banging on, or is there a bit of sense of truth in this?
The NDIS funds, on the first plan, the idea is a participant will get 100 hours of psychosocial recovery coaching, 50 in the next, and then 30 in the last year. And by the fourth year, they're not going to have any funds for it. I think that's a definition of madness. It takes half a year to build a good rapport with a client. The first minute you meet a client, especially the first time, a first participant, you will use 50 hours within the first 20 or say 12 to 14 weeks. Because, organizing all the supports you need, organizing for that rapport building. So how does it end? Forget building that immediate rapport. Mm-hmm. But what happens after? What happens after the first year where the 100 hours is gone and they're used to seeing you once, every second week, talking to you on the phone every second week, to now that's cut back in half. And then the year after that, that's also now cut back to then you disappearing. The participants I deal with, especially around the complex mental health, they come from a history of forced hospitalization, forced medication regimes, missed appointments, and a lot of disappointments. You name it, they've gone through every kind of socioeconomic disadvantage that you can think about. They've been through. You come in, and when we come in, especially on our first plan, it's like a wrecking ball. Like, we come in with this big money plan. You've just got $100,000. I'm going to get you a support worker from this company. Here's an OT. psychologists, like massive. And then what happens after that? The person they come to rely on. Trevor, I have people who call me every day just to say good morning. Hey, Brian, how are you doing? They know the name of my wife. They know the name of my kids because I am it for him. I am the person that fixes. I'm their problem solver. They don't have mom. There's no dad. There's no siblings. I am it. What happens after 2 years, 3 years, and their plan ends? Who becomes it?
Big question. I don't think we can answer it. We'll keep going around the table, but you know what? I do hope that someone answers that. Linda Reynolds is probably a relatively reasonable person that's got a bit of influence that I dare say, hopefully she's listening because there's some valid questions and quite a lot of good feedback, I dare say, that's getting passed on here. Who are we up next? Is it Jeanette? We've got some nodding. I reckon we've got probably something here.
It is unfortunately about setting those boundaries. And I hear, Brian, I have people that phone me every day as well. It's ridiculous, my little cohort of people, and it is those people with no informal supports, or the informal supports that are there are not able to adequately support them. And so it is about over the course of the time you're supporting them, making them building as much capacity as we can, but also understanding the very limitation of our role. And that limitation is, for some of our clients, it's a year together, and then we don't know what's happening. And it is very difficult to build someone's capacity within those short periods of time when there is no guarantee. We go into the review with them and we gathered all the evidence with them, and we're there beside them as they plea for their money, but we don't know if we're going to be funded in the next plan. It's brutal. Yes. It's brutal for them. And it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not a great way. Keli was saying about, having to retell your story. The NDIS is set up in such a way that there isn't that ongoing consistency and ongoing provision. It is a plan by plan fund. And I understand that now has been extended to 2-year plans, 3-year plans for some of our clients, which should give them some consistency. And again, that's a move in the right direction. But it needs to be well funded.
Yeah, I agree with that. Keli, over to you.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I'm actually, to be perfectly honest, Trevor, I'm going to keep my opinion to myself on this subject.
That's fine. No problem at all. It's all good. Right. Well, we've gone through. We've had... I think we've already gone through a couple of people that have helped us along the way, or have I missed that? I can't remember.
No, we haven't done that.
Haven't done that. I think we have. That's all good. So, Jeanette, was it your previous people that have helped you along the way? I think Susan, was that one?
That's right. So I worked at Centre Care for 12 years in one of their supported independent living. And I had a manager, Susan Williams, who had worked with those clients for 18 years when I arrived. Fabulous lady. And she literally wasn't a manager who told you what to do. She said, here's what I'm doing. Let's do it together. Every decision that was made with clients, with staff, with family, as a team. Such a good experience to be able to work somewhere like that, where someone is so generous in teaching you things and asking your opinion. I'm about to do this. What do you think? Is that a good idea, or am I mad? And that just gives, if you empower people, you get a really good support team. And that's how the system should work. We should be asking questions. We should be asking questions of people above us, people below us, people working with us, the clients, the families. That shared team environment is where we're going to really flourish. So, yeah, she's retired now, but I still keep in touch with her. 2 of her daughters work in disability. Just fabulous to be able to work with someone who's so giving of their knowledge.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's fantastic. It's always good to give back. Kelly, was it Don that I heard
Don
helped you out in
Dickey
some
from
regard?
NDIS
Yes.
gave me the kick, proverbial kick in the bum. When I worked in his support services team and was kind of, you know what, I think I was almost a support coordinator within the support services team. I did a lot of that kind of stuff when people would call, and kind of had a chat with him one day, you know, like, I think this is, and he just looked at me and went, go do it. He's like, this is what you need to do. Just go do it. So yeah, he would definitely be the one that kind of gave me that last little push and kind of went, just go, jump. And me, I don't mean to sound conceited, but I am very much my driving force. I am the reason why I've achieved everything that I have achieved. Yeah, I kick my own butt.
Oh, that's good. And I think you've got a couple of awards along the way as well for recognition.
I do have awards.
We won't list them through.
Donor.
I'm sure people are going to go through and follow up. Brian, was it James that you sort of mentioned?
Yeah, he probably was the first person who introduced me to the whole concept of support coordination, recovery coaching. He was an LAC then, and yeah, just having him as a mentor, walking me through the intricacies of what the NDIS is. I can do the legal easily. I can do the people rapport building easily. It was everything else to do with the NDIS that he stepped up and was really, really influential in teaching me how to navigate all of it.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, it's great for us to acknowledge a few people that have helped us out. Kelly, I know you've passed on Chris's name, and also Jeanette, Kylie White, a very famous person in the NDIS circles within SA, NDSP. I suppose I'll have a chat with her shortly, and Mission Australia as well. We'll get someone from there to come on in a future episode. It's come to that time. We've got our final question. I don't know if you've heard it before, but if not, here it comes. Let's pretend it's 20 years into the future and we've achieved success in the disability sector. What does it look like and feel like? Paint me a picture. Who would like to go first?
Like, have we personally or as a collective whole achieved?
The industry, as the industry. So as the industry, we have achieved whatever success looks like. We've all got a hidden picture in our head of what success looks like.
I do. I think we will have a little purple card like our Medicare card. I've said this from, day dot since the NDIS was kind of conceived, that this is where we're heading. There will be people like us in the background, because a lot of people don't know there's actually people like us in the background of Medicare and DVA and all of those places, Centrelink. And it will be a simple process. You will go to your appointment, you will hand over your card, they will swipe it, you will get your support, and you will move on your way. It will be more streamlined. People will actually get the support that they want, not over what other people are telling them that they need, which is something that happens so much in this space at the moment. People are constantly being told that they need this, they need that, they need everything else. It will be more about what people want over, like what they want, what they feel they need. What is it that they need to, be successful in their life? That's what I see. I see more people living independently. I see more little like group villages where our psychosocial people can live comfortably and safely, but not living within a traditional SEALS environment. Like those little, those like old folks' homes in Amsterdam where it's a little village, like that. They'll have their own little home and they'll be all independent, but there'll be people there to support them to be successful. That's my, that's what I see happening.
Oh, that's awesome. And let's jump over to Brian. What do you reckon?
Mine's technology based. I'm hoping that the NDIS would, and the system as a whole, adopt technology to the point where participants who struggle with severe social anxiety don't actually have to leave the house. They can, within the comfort of their own home, attend a doctor's appointment, whether it's virtually, not telehealth, not on the phone, but virtually. We'd have social gatherings that would adopt a virtual concept and slowly work themselves to the way where they can actually have an actual meetup. I'm hoping that technology will influence the way we make decisions in a positive light. It'll give people, for example, some of my clients, an ability to screen their NDIS workers before they attend. And I'm not talking about using one of the major platforms, but a proper screen where they'd be able to choose a personality trait based off, almost like a dating, but for providers. You come in, somebody chooses somebody, and it's a perfect mix of personality, compassion, somebody who understands choice and control, like a lot more independence, a lot more tech to build that independence.
Oh, it sounds like a really exciting future. I look forward to it. And Jeanette?
Continuity for people. I think one of the things that we've all talked about today has been, I connect with someone and then they're gone. That continuity, but that needs continuity of funding. That needs continuity of providers. That needs continuity of people within those areas. Being able to make those connections and have them walk along, with us as we navigate the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. Yeah, it is that long-term plan. I think as individuals, outside of NDIS, I have a plan as to what my life will look like in 10 years' time. And I think these people should also be able to have that plan of what their life looks like in 10 years' time, not you're funded for this period of time and then we don't know. Yeah,
I hear that. What's good enough for me should also be good enough for you, right? Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We've been talking to Jeanette Martin from the Benevolent Society. We've also got Keli from Spiral Coordination and Brian from BCOGNITIVE. Jeanette, we might start with you. Where can people go to find out more about what it is that you do?
So I work for the Benevolent Society. We do have a web page that you can just look up. So the Benevolent Society, and you'll find us there. There's a telephone number to call. And you can also make referral online for us. We're based in Salisbury, so if you're in the area, we do have an office there on Commercial Road, and you can pop in and come and see us here also. So, yeah. Sounds fantastic. And Brian?
The same, BCOGNITIVE, so it's www.bcognitive.com.au. There's a form there. There's a really simple referral form that you can use. And, upcoming, they might be able to find us in the metaverse. So we're going to be the first mental health clinic to build a clinic up there. So watch that space.
Exciting. Thanks for that. Hey, Keli.
You can give us a call. Check out our Facebook for any group-based activities that we have coming up. They're always up there, or you can find us on Main South Road at O'Halloran.
Fantastic. Just so everyone's aware, the show notes will have all the information that'll be kept in there. So I'll have all the details and all the links. You'll be able to click them through Spotify, YouTube, all your usual channels. But on that note, we'll finish it there for today. Thank you so much for all playing part today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Trevor. Thanks for the opportunity.